I've been collecting rare first editions and academic texts for 15 years, many signed by famous authors. Books just collect dust, but fitness equipment gets used, Dad announced as the charity truck pulled away. I thanked him for thinking of others. They forgot that half the collection was consigned from university libraries where I worked, and the donation receipts would trigger an investigation. The morning started like any other Saturday. I was in my childhood bedroom, now converted into my personal library, carefully cataloging a 1925 first edition of The Great Gatsby I'd acquired at auction the previous week. The book was pristine, worth nearly $3,000 on its own, but it was the inscription from Fitzgerald himself that made it truly priceless. My fingers traced the embossed cover as I entered its details into my digital catalog system. David? Mom's voice drifted up the stairs, carrying that particular tone that meant family drama was brewing. Can you come down for a minute? We need to discuss something. I set the Fitzgerald carefully back in its protective sleeve and made my way downstairs. The living room held the familiar cast of characters. Mom perched on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in that way that meant she'd already made up her mind about whatever was coming. Dad stood by the mantel, arms crossed, wearing his serious discussion expression. And there was Jordan, my younger brother, lounging in the recliner with that smug smile I'd known since childhood. Sit down, honey, Mom said, patting the couch cushion beside her. We've been talking, and we think it's time for some changes around here. I remained standing, sensing the setup. After 15 years in academia, first as a graduate student and now as a university librarian, I developed a keen awareness of when people were about to deliver bad news disguised as reasonable suggestions. What kind of changes? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Jordan sat up straighter, practically vibrating with excitement. Well, I've been thinking about getting serious about fitness. You know, really committing to a bodybuilding routine. That's great, I said, though I wondered where this was heading. Jordan's relationship with commitment had always been flexible at best. He dropped out of college twice, quit 4 different jobs in the past 2 years, and his last serious commitment had been to becoming a professional poker player, which lasted exactly 6 weeks. The thing is, Dad interjected, he needs space for proper equipment, a real home gym setup. I nodded slowly. The garage would be perfect for that. Plenty of room, good ventilation. Actually, Mom said, her voice taking on that artificially bright tone she used when delivering unwelcome news, we were thinking about your room. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. My room. The room where I'd spent countless hours building what was arguably one of the most comprehensive private collections of American literature and critical theory texts on the East Coast. The room that housed first editions worth more than most people's cars, signed copies from authors I'd met at conferences and lectures, and research materials that visiting professors regularly traveled hundreds of miles to access. My room, I repeated, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Now, before you get upset, Dad said, raising his hand like a traffic cop, hear us out. You're 32 years old. It's time you got your own place anyway. I looked around the room at their faces. Jordan was practically bouncing with anticipation. Mom wore that patient smile she perfected during my teenage years. Dad had already moved into lecture mode, as if he were explaining basic economics to a particularly slow student. I do have my own place, I said quietly. My apartment downtown. That tiny studio? Mom laughed. Honey, you can barely fit a bed in there. That's not a real home. What she didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that the studio apartment was perfect for my needs. It was 4 blocks from the university library where I worked, walking distance from 3 major bookstores, and exactly the right size for someone who spent most of their time either at work or in this room, surrounded by books that had taken me 15 years to collect. Besides, Jordan chimed in, you hardly even use those books anymore. They just sit there collecting dust. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Collecting dust. As if the Morrison first edition I'd spent 6 months tracking down was just decoration. As if the signed Hemingway manuscripts I'd acquired through careful networking with estate sales were mere clutter. As if the complete set of Virginia Woolf first editions, each one carefully restored and preserved, were somehow taking up space that could be better used for weight benches and protein powder containers. I use them constantly, I said, my voice remaining level despite the growing heat behind my eyes. For research, for my work at the university, for the articles I publish. Articles that what 5 people read? Dad's tone carried that particular brand of dismissal he perfected over the years. David, I'm not trying to be harsh, but let's be realistic about your career trajectory. You're a librarian at a small state university. You're not exactly setting the world on fire. The words hit like a slap, but I'd learned long ago not to react to his provocations. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that those articles he dismissed so casually had been cited in major literary journals across 3 continents. The research I conducted using my personal collection had contributed to 2 Pulitzer Prize-winning biographies and had been quoted in congressional testimony about arts funding. The room would be perfect for Jordan's equipment, Mom continued, as if the matter were already settled. All that natural light, the hardwood floors. It's really the only space in the house that makes sense. I looked at my brother, who was nodding enthusiastically. I've already picked out the equipment, he said, pulling out his phone to show me pictures. Check this out. A full power rack, Olympic weights, a cable machine, maybe even a squat platform. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jordan, who had never stuck with any physical activity for more than a few months, was planning to fill my carefully curated library with exercise equipment that would likely become expensive clothes hangers within 6 weeks. What about the books? I asked. Well, Mom said, exchanging a look with Dad. We've been thinking about that too. You know Mrs. Patterson from down the street? Her grandson just started college, and she mentioned how expensive textbooks are these days. My blood turned to ice water. You want to give away my books. Not give away, Dad corrected. Donate to families who could really use them. It's a charitable thing to do. I stared at him, wondering if he had any concept of what he was suggesting. My collection wasn't random paperbacks picked up at yard sales. These were carefully selected, meticulously maintained rare books and academic texts. The signed Allen Ginsberg alone was worth more than Jordan's car. Some of those books are quite valuable, I said carefully. Jordan waved his hand dismissively. Come on, how valuable can old books really be? It's not like they're making you money just sitting there. That was where they were wrong, catastrophically wrong. But I wasn't about to explain the intricacies of literary investment and academic resource management to people who thought books were just decorative objects. Books just collect dust, Dad announced with the confidence of someone stating an obvious truth. But fitness equipment gets used. Jordan's really committed this time. This time. The phrase carried the weight of every abandoned project, every half-finished goal, every enthusiastic beginning that fizzled out when the novelty wore off. I remembered the photography phase that lasted 3 months and cost $2,000. The woodworking period that produced exactly 1 cooked birdhouse before the tools gathered dust in the garage. The brief flirtation with gourmet cooking that ended when you realized it required cleaning dishes. I appreciate the thought, I said slowly, but I prefer to keep my collection intact. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Mom's smile became strained. Dad's jaw tightened. Jordan stopped bouncing and leaned forward with the look of someone preparing for battle. David, Mom said, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. We're trying to help your brother get his life together. This could be exactly what he needs to build some discipline. Discipline. I almost laughed. The same person who had quit his job at the bank because getting up at 8 in the morning was too restrictive was suddenly going to develop discipline through bodybuilding. Besides, Dad added, it's not like you own the room. This is our house, and we need to make decisions about how to use the space most effectively. There it was, the power play I'd been expecting. The reminder that despite being 32 years old, despite having a career and my own apartment, despite being the one family member who had never asked them for money or moved back home during tough times, I was still subject to their authority when it came to the space where I'd stored my life's work. I understand, I said quietly. You do, Mom brightened, clearly relieved that I wasn't going to fight them on this. Absolutely, your house, your rules. Jordan grinned. Awesome. I was thinking we could clear everything out this weekend. I already called the charity that can pick up the books. My heart stopped. This weekend. No point in dragging it out, Dad said. Jordan's already ordered the equipment. It'll be delivered Monday. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. This weekend. They'd already called a charity. Jordan had already ordered equipment. This wasn't a discussion or a negotiation. This was a fait accompli delivered with a pretense of family consultation. Which charity? I asked. Books for Better Tomorrows, Mom said proudly. They distribute books to underprivileged families. Isn't that wonderful? Your books will actually help people instead of just sitting there. Books for Better Tomorrows. I knew them. A well-meaning organization that collected donations and distributed them to schools and community centers. They were legitimate, but they had no idea how to handle rare books or valuable texts. They probably put a signed first edition Steinbeck in a box with children's picture books and sell the whole lot for $50 at their annual book fair. That's very thoughtful, I said. I knew you'd see it our way, Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder with false heartiness. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for family. Sacrifice for family. The phrase echoed in my head as I climbed the stairs back to my room. I stood in the doorway, looking at 15 years of careful collection, meticulous preservation, and scholarly investment. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined every wall, each book carefully organized by period, genre, and significance. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced around volumes that had shaped American literature. I pulled out my phone and opened my Notes app, scrolling through the digital catalog I'd maintained for insurance purposes. The total value listed at the bottom made my throat tighten, $247,000, not including the books that were technically on loan from the university's special collections, which I was authorized to house off-site for research purposes. Those books weren't mine to donate. They belonged to the university, and their disappearance would trigger not just an investigation, but potential criminal charges for theft of state property. The loan agreements filed with the university's legal department clearly stated that the books were to remain in my custody for ongoing research projects and could only be returned to the university or transferred to another qualified academic institution. But my family didn't know about those agreements. They'd never bothered to understand what I actually did for work, beyond the simplified explanation of librarian that they could file away and forget about. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. If they wanted to donate my books, I needed to make sure they understood exactly what they were doing. I pulled up the insurance documentation and began making copies of everything: appraisals, loan agreements, acquisition records, research citations. Then I called my insurance company. Hartfield Insurance, this is Jennifer speaking. Hi Jennifer, this is David Chen. I need to update my personal property policy. Of course, Mr. Chen. What kind of changes are you looking to make? I need to file a change of custody notification for my book collection. It's being relocated against my wishes, and I want to make sure the coverage reflects the new circumstances. There was a pause. I'm sorry, could you clarify? Are you moving? No, the property is being donated by third parties who don't have legal ownership. I want to make sure that if anything happens to the collection during the transfer, the liability is properly documented. Another pause, longer this time. Mr. Chen, I think you might want to speak with our legal department about this situation. That would be helpful, yes. 20 minutes later, I'd spoken with 3 different people and filled out enough paperwork to document that I had explicitly objected to the donation and that any damages or losses would be the responsibility of the parties who had initiated the transfer without proper legal authority. Next, I called the university. Special Collections, this is Margaret. Hi Margaret, it's David. I need to discuss the materials I have on extended loan. Oh, hello David. Is everything all right with the research project? Margaret was the head of Special Collections, a formidable woman in her 60s who treated rare books like beloved children and researchers who mishandled materials like criminals. She'd known me for 8 years and trusted me with materials that most scholars could only access in the reading room under strict supervision. There's been a development. My family is insisting on donating my personal collection to charity, and they don't understand that some of the materials aren't actually mine to donate. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, are you telling me that university property is about to be given away to a charity? I'm trying to prevent that, but I wanted to give you advance warning. David, those materials are irreplaceable. Some of them are the only surviving copies of certain manuscripts. If they're damaged or lost, I know, I'm working on a solution. You need to recover those materials immediately. I don't care what family drama is involved. Those books are the property of the state university system, and their loss would be a criminal matter. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my room, surrounded by the books that had defined my adult life. Each one represented hours of research, careful bidding at auctions, networking with estate sales, and building relationships with dealers and collectors. The Ginsburg had come from a private sale arranged through a professor who'd known the poet personally. The Morrison First Edition had been a gift from the author herself after the lecture series I'd organized. The Hemingway manuscripts had taken 3 years of patient negotiation with a collector's estate. But it wasn't just the monetary value. These books were the foundation of my research, the tools of my profession, the scaffolding that supported every article I'd published and every lecture I'd given. Losing them would be like asking a surgeon to operate without instruments or a chef to cook without knives. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Jordan appeared in the doorway. "Hey, I brought some boxes," he said cheerfully, carrying a stack of cardboard containers. "Figured we could start packing tonight, get a head start on tomorrow." I looked at the boxes, then at my brother's eager face. He genuinely didn't understand what he was asking me to do. To him, books were interchangeable objects, as disposable as magazines or newspapers. The idea that I might have spent years building relationships to acquire specific editions, or that certain volumes were critical to ongoing research projects, simply didn't register in his worldview. "Jordan," I said carefully, "some of these books aren't mine to give away." He laughed. "What do you mean? They're in your room, aren't they?" "Some of them are on loan from the university for research purposes." His expression didn't change. "So, you can get them again later if you need them." I realized then that explaining the situation was pointless. Jordan lived in a world where everything was replaceable, where Google could answer any question, where the idea of rare or unique resources was as foreign as speaking ancient Greek. "I need to make some calls first," I said, "before we pack anything." "Calls to who?" "The university, my insurance company, the donors who helped me acquire some of these books." Jordan's face scrunched up in confusion. "Why would you need to call them?" "It's just a donation." "It's complicated." He shrugged. "Whatever. Just don't take forever. I want to get this done so I can measure for the equipment." After he left, I pulled out the folder where I kept all my acquisition paperwork: purchase receipts, loan agreements, insurance appraisals, correspondence with sellers and estates. It was a thick folder representing 15 years of meticulous record keeping. I photographed every document, uploaded them to cloud storage, and emailed copies to my personal attorney. Then I called Books for Better Tomorrows. "Books for Better Tomorrows, this is Carol speaking." "Hi Carol, my name is David Chen. I understand you're scheduled to pick up a book donation tomorrow." "Yes, we're very excited about it. Your mother said it's quite a large collection." "That's what I wanted to discuss. Some of the books in that collection are quite valuable, and others are actually university property on loan for research. I wanted to make sure you understood the legal implications before the pickup." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Some of the books aren't legally available for donation. They're university property, and giving them away would constitute theft of state property." Another pause. "Mr. Chen, I think we need to clarify something. Are you the owner of these books?" "Some of them, yes. Others are on loan to me from various institutions." "And you're opposing this donation?" "I'm trying to prevent the illegal transfer of property that doesn't belong to my family." "Oh my, I think we need to speak with our legal department about this. Can you hold, please?" 10 minutes later, Carol came back on the line. "Mr. Chen, our legal department has advised us that we cannot accept any donation where there's a dispute about ownership or legal authority to donate. We're going to have to cancel tomorrow's pickup." "I understand. That's probably the safest approach." After I hung up, I heard voices downstairs growing louder. Apparently, someone had called to confirm the pickup and was told it was canceled. I could hear Dad's voice rising, followed by Mom's higher pitch joining in. Then Jordan's voice, angrier than the others. Heavy footsteps on the stairs announced Dad's arrival. His face was red, and he was breathing hard from both the climb and his anger. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I protected property that isn't legally ours to donate," I replied calmly. "This is ridiculous. They're just books, David. Books sitting in boxes in our house." Some of them are university property. Donating them would be theft. You're being dramatic. I reached for my laptop and pulled up the loan agreements. Would you like to read the legal documentation? The penalties for loss or theft of university property start at $10,000 in fines and can include criminal charges. Dad's face shifted from red to pale as he scanned the documents. You never said anything about this. You never asked. You assumed everything in this room belonged to me personally. Mom appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. Surely there must be some way to work this out. Can't you just return the university books and donate the rest? I looked at her, this woman who had raised me but never really understood what I did for a living, what mattered to me, or why I had spent 15 years building something she saw as clutter. The university books are mixed throughout the collection, I said. It would take weeks to properly sort them, and some of the books I own personally are worth more than Jordan's car. Donating them to a charity that would sell them for $5 at a book fair would be financially irresponsible. How much could old books possibly be worth? Jordan asked from behind Mom. I turned my laptop screen toward them and pulled up the insurance documentation. The page showed individual appraisals for some of the more valuable pieces. A signed Toni Morrison First Edition, $8,500. A complete set of Hemingway First Editions, $12,000. A signed Allen Ginsberg manuscript, $6,200. The room went silent. These numbers are made up, Jordan said finally. I pulled up the auction house website where I'd purchased the Morrison. The sale record was still online, showing the final bid price and my username as the winning bidder. Jesus Christ, Dad whispered. The total appraised value of the collection is just over $240,000, I said quietly, not including the university materials, which are technically priceless because they're one-of-a-kind manuscripts. Mom sat down heavily in my desk chair. We had no idea. No, I agreed. You didn't. Jordan was staring at the screen like it showed evidence of alien life. But they're just books. They're rare books, first editions, signed copies, research materials that scholars travel across the country to access. They're the tools of my profession and the foundation of my research. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Well, he said, I guess we need to rethink this whole situation. Do we? I asked. Because this morning you seemed quite certain that books just collect dust and that Jordan needed this room for his gym equipment. Dad's jaw tightened. That was before we understood the scope of the situation. The scope of the situation was the same this morning. The only thing that's changed is your awareness of the financial value. Now wait just a minute, Jordan interjected. I still need space for my equipment. Just because your books are expensive doesn't mean I don't have rights in this house too. I looked at my younger brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Jordan, who had never bought a book in his adult life, who got his news from social media and entertainment from streaming services, who couldn't understand why anyone would need to own physical copies of anything when everything was available online. Now wait just a minute, Jordan interjected. I still need space for my equipment. Just because your books are expensive doesn't mean I don't have rights in this house too. I looked at my younger brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Jordan, who had never bought a book in his adult life, who got his news from social media and entertainment from streaming services, who couldn't understand why anyone would need to own physical copies of anything when everything was available online. You're absolutely right, I said. You do have rights in this house. But you don't have the right to destroy property that doesn't belong to you, and you don't have the right to force me to give away 15 years of work. So what are you saying? Mom asked. I'm saying that if Jordan needs space for a gym, the garage would work perfectly, or the basement, or he could join an actual gym like most people do. But I want the home gym experience, Jordan protested. I want to be able to work out whenever I want in my own space. Then perhaps you should buy your own home, I suggested. The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Jordan still lived at home at 28, nominally saving money for his own place, but spending most of his income on gadgets, games, and impulsive purchases that kept him perpetually broke. That's not fair, Mom said. Jordan's working on getting established. So was I, at his age. The difference is that I actually got established. Dad's face was getting red again. You don't need to be insulting. I'm not being insulting. I'm being accurate. Jordan has had 10 years of adulthood to establish himself, and he's chosen to remain financially dependent on you. That's fine, but it doesn't give him the right to demand that I give up my life's work to accommodate his latest hobby. It's not a hobby, Jordan snapped. I'm serious about this. Like you were serious about photography, and woodworking, and poker, and cooking. Jordan's face flushed. This is different. How? Because it is, I can feel it. I nodded thoughtfully. Tell you what, prove it. Join a gym for 6 months. Show up every day. Build the habit. Demonstrate the commitment. If you can do that, we can revisit the conversation about space. That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, except it doesn't require me to sacrifice my collection to enable your experiment. The room fell silent again. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. The slow realization that they'd walked into a situation they didn't understand and couldn't easily control. Look, Dad said finally, maybe we can find a compromise here. I'm listening. What if Jordan sets up his gym in the garage and we convert part of the basement into additional storage for your books? I considered this. The basement was dry and climate controlled and would actually provide better conditions for long-term book storage than my current room. That could work, I said, with proper shelving and organization. Jordan's face fell. But I wanted the room with the windows. Windows are bad for books, I explained. UV light damages paper and bindings. The basement would actually be much better for preservation. But the room upstairs is perfect for working out. The garage has more space, better ventilation, and you won't disturb anyone when you're lifting weights at 6 in the morning. Jordan looked around at my family, clearly hoping for support. But I could see that the financial revelation had shifted the dynamic. It was harder to dismiss my needs when they understood that my hobby was worth more than a house. Fine, Jordan said sullenly. I guess I'll use the garage. And David, Mom said, we're sorry we didn't understand how important your collection is. I nodded. Thank you. But as I watched them file out of my room, I realized their apology wasn't really about understanding the importance of my work. It was about understanding the monetary value of my possessions. They still saw books as objects rather than tools, collections rather than resources. The only difference was that now they knew these particular objects were expensive. Over the next few days, I began moving my collection to the basement. I hired professional book movers, installed climate control systems, and designed a library space that was actually superior to my old room. The university was relieved to know their materials would be in an even more secure environment. Jordan began setting up his gym in the garage, though his enthusiasm seemed somewhat dampened by the compromise. He'd ordered less equipment than originally planned, perhaps realizing that having a home gym was less appealing when it wasn't taking someone else's space. 3 weeks later, I was organizing the new basement library when Mom came downstairs with a cup of coffee. This is really beautiful, David, she said, looking around at the organized shelves and reading area I'd created. Thank you. I have to ask, she said, settling into one of the reading chairs I'd installed. How did you know so much about insurance and legal agreements? You handled that whole situation like a lawyer. I smiled. 15 years of collecting rare books teaches you a lot about provenance, legal ownership, and protecting valuable property. Plus, I work in a university library. Understanding the legal aspects of collection management is part of my job. We really didn't know, she said quietly. I know. Is there anything else we don't know? About your work, I mean. I considered the question. I've been offered positions at 3 major universities in the past 2 years. I turned them down because I like living near family. Mom's eyebrows rose. Really? What kind of positions? Head of Special Collections at Yale. Associate Director of Rare Books at the University of Chicago. Senior Manuscript Curator at Duke. Those sound important. They are. They're also in different cities. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Are you reconsidering those offers? I don't know, I said honestly. It depends on whether I feel like family still matters here. Of course family matters. Does it? Because for a while there, it felt like I was just someone who takes up space that could be better used for other purposes. Mom winced. We made a mistake, David. We thought you were just attached to old things. I am attached to old things. That's my profession. I preserve, study, and care for old things because they matter, because they tell stories, preserve knowledge, and connect us to the people who came before us. I think I'm beginning to understand that. I hoped she was. But understanding and respecting are different things, and only time would tell which one my family was capable of. 6 months later, Jordan's gym equipment sat mostly unused in the garage, covered with dust and draped with clothes. He joined a CrossFit gym downtown and was talking about selling his home equipment to fund a new passion for rock climbing. I never mentioned the irony to my parents. I didn't need to. The evidence was right there in the garage, gathering dust just like books never do. My basement library, meanwhile, had become a destination for visiting scholars and graduate students. The university had officially designated it as an off-site research facility, and I've been granted additional funding to expand the collection. Sometimes family needs to learn the hard way that some things are worth more than the space they take up. And sometimes the people we love need to understand that their convenience isn't more important than our life's work. I was still living in the family home, but now it felt like a choice rather than a compromise. My collection was safe, my work was respected, and Jordan had learned that having space for something and using it productively are entirely different things. The books, as always, endured.